What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who served time at other prisons. We're going to be talking about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of the prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today I'm really excited about this guest that I have because I was just recently on a podcast, Born Unbreakable, with Des Maya, who has an excellent podcast and is doing great things. And the funny thing is we got talking after the podcast. She said, "Oh my gosh, you got to talk to this Anthony Pierre, man. He's got such a great story." And he said, "You guys get along so well." And so she was nice enough to actually connect us up through an email. And then Anthony and I connected up and we set up a time here. And just to tell you a little bit about Anthony, he's kind of got that story where you're like, how did that happen? He grew up and there was an event that happened where he heard a school teacher talking about him, like, that kid's not going to be any good. That kid's not going anywhere. And he took that upon himself. Instead of taking that as a limiting belief that that's exactly what was going to happen, he took it the other way and said, no, I'm going to show that teacher what I'm going to be. And he got A's, and he was in football and got a scholarship, and he went on, he got out, and he blew it up in the real estate world. He started a mortgage company. It was Ace Mortgage, and then went in and became a real estate investor, very successful real estate investor. But, as there always is, there's that blindside hit, and he was trying to help a guy out that he was a lifetime friend with, and it ended up in a bad nightmare. And he's here, and he's gotten out. He served 6 years. And he has recreated himself and entered back into the world as a success. He's an author of Boundless Success. Check it out on Amazon. So, everybody, I'd like to introduce Mr. Anthony Pierre. Thank you, Anthony, for being here.
Man, thank you, Brent, for having me, man. It's such a pleasure, man. Such a pleasure.
So, Anthony, I got it. Your story reads. And, as you see these type of things or read these type of things, you're like, wow, how'd he get back up? He was up, he got knocked down, he got back up. When you were growing up as a kid, what was your life like? What was Anthony doing as a kid growing up? Did you have a normal childhood? Was it difficult? What was happening back then?
Well, growing up as a kid, my mother, my father, mother, they were married, but when I was about 14, they had a divorce. But, so that was a different change. So my father grew up, he was worked at GM. So, of course, we had a pretty, middle class type lifestyle, and I was big in sports as a kid, played, baseball, football, basketball, just typical sports, was always an athlete, pretty decent athlete. Just one of those just basic kids, man. Nothing super special. Wasn't really a big school guy. Never was really into school. It was like always a household mom. Always have to yell a million times to get up to school. I was just that guy. I was that kid that you just had to keep doing that. But for the most part, I was a happy-go-lucky kid. I've always been a positive kid. Always looked at things from a positive perspective. So I was the kid that a lot of kids like to be around because I was just.
You were just wired that way.
I was just wired that way. I always been positive. I always looked at things from a more positive perspective. So that was just kind of my take, man. So and I kind of carried through life. But I was mischief. I used to get into a lot of different things. I didn't mind skipping school and doing stuff like that because I didn't like school. And that's kind of what led to that moment that you kind of mentioned about when I kind of got serious about my life, man, because I had a teacher say, hey,
how old would you have been then, Anthony? Fifth, sixth grade?
At that time, I think I was in the sixth grade. Yeah. So, I don't know what age is that.
Probably sixth grade, probably 10, 12, 11, 12.
Yeah, somewhere in that age. And But the same gentleman that I ended up catching my case with was the same gentleman that I had skipped with when she said that he had a future and I had no future and don't hang with me. And that really hurt me and made me really look at things different. And at that moment, I just was on a mission to really prove her wrong, because it wasn't that couldn't have been great at school. It was the fact that I just didn't like school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was no real motivation to be in there. And, and when I was there, it was just like trying to just get through it, so to speak. But that was like the really first time that it was like, hey, I can't get through this. I need to excel at this. So let me grab this bag and let me sit down and do this homework.
So you got competitive with it. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I got competitive because I was an athlete, so I was always competitive, you know. So yeah, and that's really what it was. It was like me against her. Like every day it was like, I'm about to prove her wrong. So, and that's what it was. So it was like night and day, man. And that really showed me one thing, which I think is important, and hopefully your listeners, get this point, is that I realized that, that she was never going to define me, that I define myself for who I am or who I want to be.
Right.
And I think that's for each and every individual person. It does not matter, even if you're going in the wrong direction. It doesn't matter if you're confused right now, don't understand what you should be doing, why you should be doing it. But you don't never have to let anyone or any one situation define who you are, and let that be the actual bowling ball, so to speak, or, just path of your entire existence in life. And I think that's when I really realized that once I started, getting A's and started turning everything. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah, I can do this. Let me just turn in my work. Let me start with doing all my homework and let's see how that goes. Right. And then it started to work out, man. And that's kind of, where it started. And I was off and running at the time. I had a lot of confidence in my ability to do things. I mean, I was even voted in the 8th grade, voted the the president or something like that. I student council
body, student body, president.
Student body council president. Like, the whole school was shocked. And I was there since I was like in kindergarten, so everybody knew about Anthony, the little terror, coming up. So
now, did you have any siblings? Did you have?
Yeah, I had siblings. Yeah, I had siblings. I had a sister. I got 2 sisters and a brother.
Yeah.
All younger. I was the oldest.
Oh, so you were the oldest. Okay, so you were leading the way. Okay.
So I was leading the way. Yeah, I was leading the path. I was leading the pack. So.
What were your in that time period with high school and those things? Did you run more or less with the guys that were playing sports and doing that, or was there an element of temptation anywhere else that you had to try to stay away from or anything, or did you just have a pretty normal high school world?
Well, my mother family is really close knit. So
okay.
I grew up a lot with my cousins, and all of them were like into sports and stuff like that. And then, I had a few friends of school, which is the one that we became really, really close friends. But most of them was neighborhood friends. We played sports, and then it was family. And that's kind of, how my life has always been.
That sounds good.
A couple of close friends, and then family has always been my biggest support. So that was kind of my life. I mean, we grew up spending the night from family to family house, and who's going to go over this cousin's house this week. I mean, that was like, us, when I go back to childhood, that's, what I remember, or auntie saying, no, Tony, you're too bad. You're not coming over this weekend, stuff like that. Like, so I would have to be good next time. So I go over to auntie, so-and-so house. So that was just like my childhood, man. It was pretty cool. It wasn't really filled with any type of, badness or violence or nothing like that. I wasn't around the streets like that, even though we had, we wasn't rich, but we wasn't necessarily poor. But even when we were in poor situations, it didn't seem like we were poor. So it's like you wouldn't have never known that until you really go out and see the rest of the world. So
right.
It was pretty normal in terms of how I grew up, so to speak.
So when you enter the back end of high school and that you're where did you end up going to college?
Well, I end up, coming out of college, and I end up going to junior college.
Okay.
I end up, having, when I was coming, I was great. I was a pretty good athlete. I used to get a lot of letters from like a lot of the top colleges like Penn State and Pittsburgh and all those things for football. But I didn't do well on my SATs or my ACTs. I only took it once.
I
And
always hated the SATs.
I was a little, I guess maybe a little, had a little bit of overconfidence.
Yeah.
So I took it like the last year at the last second, and I really didn't get the scores that was really favorable for some of the schools that I wanted to play at. So I elected to go and play junior college.
Okay.
So I went and played junior college for a couple of years down in the Illinois junior college system for a school called Joliet Junior College.
I've heard of
and
that.
Then that's where I earned and that's where I earned my scholarship. I earned a scholarship from there to Western Illinois University, and down there, home at the Leathernecks, and I went off and played red shirt 1 year, and then played 2 years on the field. So I was in college for 5 years, and that was during that time. After in 93, 94, I came out of college right around 97, something like that.
What positions did you play, Anthony?
You know what? I played in junior college. I played running back.
Okay.
But when I got to Western Illinois, I played everything. I played both ways. I was one of the few players that played both ways. I played cornerback and I played running back. So I was kind of, I was starting at the corner, and then I will also alternate and play running back. And then my last year, I just played played cornerback. But I did all the special teams. I was, on all the returns, and, I broke a lot of records, blocking punts and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was just like the athletic kid. And
you were the athlete. They recruit athletes now. They just call them athletes, and they play them wherever position. So when you
played everywhere.
Yeah, you played everywhere. So I'm curious, the real estate whole piece of that, did that start to develop when you were in college, or did you pick up on that as you got out of college?
Well, when I was in college, I studied special education. So I was wanting to teach. Mm-hmm. That was something that I was interested in. Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it was one of my buddies on the football team was like, "Hey, have you heard of special education?" I said, "Yeah, no, I don't know what is that." And he told me about it. I said, "Oh, that's interesting." He says, "Well, they looking for male teachers." And I was like, "Really?" I said, "Well, man, that's something I'm interested in." So I went into that field thinking that, hey, it was a need, and then also I liked the ideal of maybe teaching, because I didn't like a lot of teachers. I hated how they dealt with people, so I always thought that if I ever wanted to teach, I'm gonna be different, So that was kind of what it was. But when I was in high school, we had a couple of successful teachers that came in. That was substitutes. We had one NFL player used to come in and substitute a lot of time, and he used to give us a lot of wisdom as kids and what we should do. And then we had one other retired guy that used to come in, and he will always talk about real estate and investing in the stock market. And that was like me and one of my other best friends was something that we would always talk about at school. Like, did you talk to so-and-so? And he was talking about this. And man, I think, real estate. And he says, you can invest in, this type of fund, or you can put money in a bond and make interest, So, these were things that we were I started being interested in, but I didn't know anything, how to do it, where to go, had no clue. But that was the seed that was planted. So when I was in my senior year my final year in college, and, I worked out for like about 13 or so, 12, 13 NFL teams. And I was going through that process, and I was thinking like, well, if I don't get drafted, or if I don't, get a decent free agency, what do I really want to do? Do I really want to teach? Mm-hmm. And, my last year, I realized that I wanted to teach, but I didn't want to teach in the school system. And because I really didn't like the environment. And the funny thing is, I didn't like the lunchroom smell. Like, did you go to school? Like, I couldn't stand that.
That's pretty common.
I couldn't stand that when I got back into school and I started teaching my first little class with some special ed students. I couldn't stand the smell. It took me back, and I was like, I hate that smell. And then I didn't like the wet mop smell either. So I didn't like the lunchroom smell or the wet mop smell. But what really did it for me is that I didn't like being in a teacher's lounge, because like my first day in the teacher's lounge, we were sitting in there, and they were talking about all the kids. And I was like, so this is what you guys do. So really, I was just turned off, because they would, talk about certain kids that did certain stuff. And I'm just listening there, and I just was like, you know what, do you want to do this for the next 20, 25, 30 years of your life, sitting in these rooms? So at that moment, I had kind of made a decision, like, you know what, I think I am going to just finish up what I need to do. But I was almost done. Like I had been studying for those years for special education.
Yeah.
So I only had my practicums left to actually, graduate. But I decided to change my major at the last minute to just like sales management. I went into like a special program that can keep a lot of my credit hours. And I just kind of did a liberal type arts type degree to actually just finish up and make sure that I didn't waste all those credit hours. And that was kind of how I graduated. But I didn't even graduate then. That's what's so funny. Like I didn't graduate in 97 like I was supposed to. I was supposed to do an assurance and then come back for like 12 hours to finish that course. And I did the insurance, what do you call it when you guys, go in and intern. I did an internship with an insurance company and I didn't get that was all right, but I didn't like it. But I decided because I got that position in the mortgage industry with the guy, I decided that, man, why go back? I got this opportunity and I could probably make more money, doing this. And then also I had decided my last year after working out for NFL teams, and I had a couple of opportunities. I have the same age as my cousin. I decided to just walk away from football altogether. And that was because I had decided that, I was only looking at a free agent opportunity at that time, and I was being looked at by a lot of different teams, and they were all talking free agent. And I had did a research on what was it, because my cousin played at that time in the league. And I'm like, what's the minimum? Like, and I'm trying to do all my research. And I think for me coming out was like $115K at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 115,000. That wasn't the millions that I've been waiting to, to get to, man. So for that, I decided, man, I already had 2 knee surgeries coming out of high school, and I just kind of made the decision to walk away. And then I figured, like, if I could make 50 grand, working at a company, I think I'll be doing okay.
Yeah.
And then go and go through that whole process, because it's a process when you play football.
Sure. Ever
since you was 6 or 7 years old, and then now you in college and you going to that next level, and now it's a job.
Yeah.
And you talking about football 24/7. I mean, that's your life. So,
yeah.
So I just made a decision to walk away, and that was kind of that, and work my way in.
So you found your way into, was it an internship that you got into with the real estate? Or did you find somebody that you knew in real estate? How did that work?
No, I did a little bit of research. So I know I wanted to maybe learn how to get into real estate, but I had no clue how I was going to get into real estate. But when I decided to leave school, and not go back.
Well, the reason I ask you, Anthony, it seems like you would have been fairly young when you were making big inroads with Ace Mortgage and that. I mean, just by thumbing through your book part, how old would you have been when you started making some big jumps?
I was like 24.
Yeah, that's young. Yeah.
I was 24 when I had heard about the mortgage industry. I was doing my internships and stuff like that, and then I was working part-time at a rental car place.
Yeah.
And that's when I met a guy, and he was telling me about the mortgage industry. And instantly when I learned what it was, I was like, well, people got to get mortgages for houses.
Yeah.
If I can get there, then that'll put me one step closer to figuring out how to purchase a house in real estate. So that was the two. So that's what made me go into the mortgage industry. And then I met one of my mentors, Jerry. He had just started his first company, and then I became owner within 6 months, and actually became vice president. And I was his, it was 1 and 2, and like I was his Robin. And, we kind of, blew that company up and did some amazing things beyond what I could have imagined as a 24, 25-year-old. And then shortly after that, I had started my other company, which was Mactone Investments, which was roughly right around about 2000, the year 2000. And
you would have been maybe your early 30s then, or what?
Yeah, I was 20, what was I, 28?
28,
like
29, yeah.
27, yeah, I was like 27, 28, somewhere right around that.
You were making some moves,
like 97,
Anthony,
I was 28, yeah. I was 28. I went, like I said, I ended up purchasing probably that year over $2.2, almost $3 million in real estate. And did some amazing, some amazing things, and I was still a young guy. So it was ridiculous.
It's impressive. And personally wise, are you married then, or do you have kids then?
I was married and I got divorced. So I was with my wife, my girlfriend from all throughout in college. We was together for like 7 years. We were married. We got married, and then we ended up getting divorced somewhere right around about 2002.
Okay.
So roughly after I just started to really blow up, and then me and her kind of fell out. And that was that. And at that time, I was raising my youngest daughter. Yeah, I was raising my youngest daughter. She was, I started raising her since she was 2, and then I had just had my son Anthony.
Okay.
At that time, and he was like 1, and then that was that.
So tell me about all this is happening. You're blowing up. You're doing well. Everything that you probably would have dreamed of was happening for you. Tell me when the nightmare hits.
Well, I mean, the first nightmare was a lesson that I would never forget. That kind of started everything. The first lesson was when the stock market and when 9/11 happened, and because our company, we were kind of a hybrid, so to speak. We invested in the real estate, but we did our cash flow income and leveraging the stock market. Yeah. So because again, when I was a kid, that's what I heard. So I was leveraging both, and we were heavily into options and puts and doing things like that. So when the .com imploded, that kind of affected us, and then also 9/11. It ended up really, really affecting us because we made a really bad error that ended up costing us millions and millions of dollars. Matter of fact, I'll tell you the quick story is that when we set up, we had 2 hedge accounts. One of the accounts was set for just to play one side of the market, and the other ones we was doing on the other side of the market. And when 9/11 hit, I'm talking to, my best friend out of the world, but we call ourselves brothers. But I'm talking to him and I'm saying, what the heck happened? Because we was losing millions of dollars. And I'm like, what happened? And I'm dealing with the real estate. He's dealing with that part of it. And he's telling me what was happening. And then I said, hey, did you hedge the other account? We had all that money in the other account. I thought you was going to hedge it just in case something like this happened. I said, did you leverage it? And then he gave me this silly look on his face. And he's just like, man, no. He's like, it was just happening so fast. He was like, I never seen anything like this. I didn't. I'm sorry. So I says, well, what would have happened had we done that? So he went back, did a little research and went back and replayed. And if he had done what he should have done, what we had planned to do, he realized that he says, man, you're going to hate me probably for the rest of my life. He says, but if we would have did that, he says, what we'll be worth right now? I says, what? He says, we'll be roughly worth about $26 million. Oh,
God. Wow.
I'm like,
wow.
So that was our first where we started, losing. We did some other things we tried to invest in. We ended up losing a whole lot of money, did a big concert. You can probably look at where we brought O.J. Simpson to do some autographs, and that didn't go well. So it's like all kind of stupid stuff that we were doing, and we were just losing money. So that was our first nightmare. And then, roughly after that, we started making a move, back. 2008 was another crash. But we were I was leveraging myself in the real estate, in a way that I was being able to take advantage of what was going on at that time. So it was actually starting to be really, really great. Advantageous for me, despite, the misfortunes that was going on with everyone else. But it was in early 2009 when the real nightmare, when I had decided to do a favor to try to help a friend out of a bad situation where I ended up getting caught with contraband in my car, and they ended up arresting me, and the rest is history, man. And
so Anthony, because I want to make sure that I understand it, but you weren't in any type of business of drugs or anything. This guy came to you that you'd known for a long time. You were in and out of whatever city this was because of business, and you thought basically it wouldn't be a big deal because you would just be a business guy driving from here to there, and you were dropping something off. Is that pretty much what it was?
No, I mean, it's a little bit more than that, because here's the thing, and just to keep it 100 for your listeners, you can't grow up around and be around drug dealers and things like that and not be affected by that world, right? Or even that lifestyle. So I had, friends and family that, that was in that I would see and be around all the time and see. So it wasn't like I was just over here in suburban America and I wasn't near it. It wasn't near it enough to where I could touch it, first and foremost. And then secondly, I had already been doing a lot to help a lot of guys in that industry try to get out. So I was already helping them, get homes and helping them, showing them how to actually convert their money over.
Take that money and put it in the right places.
Put it into investments. So I was already kind of, and that's why I said I was kind of reaching down because I wasn't really, when you grew up around it, I didn't see it the way the rest of the world look at it until I actually got it pulled into it. I was saying like, man, I can help these guys, man. I can help them get out. If they can convert from, putting the energy that they're doing selling drugs, if they can get over here in real estate, do it legitimately and get out here and get away from the streets.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what was going on. So this was a similar type situation for him where, I'm like, hey, I can help you, man. Like, you need to, I knew these people. I was already associated with these people. I already helped some of these people, get real estate and other different things. And I was trying to get him to say, hey, stop it. But he had got into a bad jam and and it was really like that one more. This is how you see in the movies, like, hey, we're going to do this one bank robbery, this last one, right? This is going to be the one, and then I'm done. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of one of those situations, like, man, but if I can get this.
It would have been a good pay for everybody.
It'd be good pay for everybody. Yeah. I can, go off, and then I can do what I really want to do, which was he wanted to, do this trucking company thing that he wanted to do. So that was really what it really was. So I decided to help. After telling him for like 3 weeks, like, no. But he kind of pleaded with me and then I kind of got soft and was like, you know what? All right, man, let's get this done. And, and hopefully we move forward. And I was starting to set up what he was going to do with his new business. So when I got back and whatever, but I never made it back. I ended up getting caught up. I didn't know that he was being looked at, by, other authorities and they were tapping phones and I was oblivious to a lot of the stuff that was going on, and I ended up getting myself in something that was a lot bigger than me.
So the day that it happened, what went through your mind? You see the sirens. I think it was you got pulled over.
If I could show you my picture when I was locked up, that'll tell you what was going on in my mind. I mean, I had my face was I was just in shock.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that I was actually now. When I got stopped, I thought it was routine, but it wasn't. And then when I realized that this was bigger and this was something else, that's when I really, started to think like, wow. But I was always optimistic. I told you that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking like, oh, you can get out of this some way. He just illegally stopped me. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I was looking at everything like it's a way, it's a way out of this. Like, I mean, I'm suited and booted every day. Like, I'm a businessman. Like,
right.
I can get out of this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can make it happen. They made a lot of errors. And when I was talking to my attorney, that's what I was telling them. Like, man, they illegally stopped me, man. They had no reason to stop me. They didn't never give me a ticket, nothing. They illegally searched my, my vehicle. They brought dogs and all these other different things, right? So, but the reality of it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
Right? And I'm sure and you went through it, and it was a lot of, it's the only industry, if we keeping it real, where they can break the law to uphold the law.
Yep.
So they're never held accountable for breaking the law or violating your rights or anything like that. They're never held accountable for that. So it's really, you got everything against you. And that's one of the things that, I teach a lot, in my academy, and I teach a lot with, is that understanding, you're against what odds you are against when you're doing anything. You have to do the numbers. You have to look at the whole full picture before you decide what vehicles you may pick, in your life in order to, be successful. And I think I learned a lot from this experience.
So Anthony, the day that it happened, and then how long did this process happen going through it before you realized that, hey, I'm done. I'm going to plead. I think you said you were looking at 22 years and ended up getting 6 years. How long did that whole process take for you to walk through that?
I mean, it was, I knew, I didn't know what I would be at, but it probably was about 7 months when me locked up. And that's when I kind of came to the reality, and that's why they make it extremely difficult. And that's another systematic thing that they do with the bonds and stuff like that. Like, it makes it difficult for you to get out, so you can already start to acclimate into a prison type lifestyle, right? So I'm locked up, I'm in there, it's miserable, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know where I'm going. I need some type of closure. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I kind of thought about when I was looking at 22 years. I was talking to another friend of mine who had did 15 years, probably 3 weeks before at a sushi bar. We just met, and I remember him telling me something that made me really, make that decision to go ahead and plead and take that 6 years, is because he was telling me, he says, Anthony, he says, they offered me 5 years. He says, but I was innocent, and I knew that I could fight it, and I knew that everything they had done was wrong. And he says, but none of that mattered. He says, I end up going all the way to the box and trying to fight it. He says, I end up getting, the judge ignored everything, threw everything, didn't pay any attention, didn't care. And I ended up getting 15 years. And he says that if I would have just took 5 years, that, that would have been 10 extra years that I'm with my kids, my family. That's a long time.
Speaking of your kids, how old would your kids have been when you were going through this, right at this moment?
My youngest was, Aiden was 8, Anthony was 10, Courtney was 16 at the time, and Amaya was 2.
I've got a Courtney. My oldest is Courtney. So
yeah, my oldest is Courtney too.
So Anthony, so were you? It just blows my mind how you had all this going on, and then all this happens and explodes. What is your family thinking?
Well, my family was extremely, my mother, more than anything, man, looking at my mom's face, man, my mother was so disappointed. Yeah. You can see it. Yeah. The worst thing you can see is when your mom come, right? That is like the worst feeling ever, man. And that was for me, like, that moment, because my father had passed when I was like 17, 18. But my mother, man, and I know how hard she worked to put me in positions. Yeah. I know everything that I know. You know all the struggle, right? Yeah. And then for you to be there and to be in a position to be educated, and then now you're sitting here, looking at 22 years in prison, man. It was hard. It broke my heart, and it was just like one of the most difficult things to experience. And then on top of that, the kids, because I was supposed to pick my kids up that they, I pretty much, my kids were with me all the time, and they went, and we were setting up for them to be with me during the school year, because they usually would be with me during the school year. So that was difficult too, knowing that weekend was coming, and then they were with their moms, and that now they wouldn't potentially see me, or unless they would have to see me, behind bars. So that was, man. So those are two of the most difficult things right there, family, and then your children, and having to really face them and look at that, and then realize how many people you let down. And then all the other people that, business-wise, right? It was a lot of people that I did business with, a lot of people that, relied on me, a lot of people that worked for me, right? Yeah. That, enjoyed what we were doing, what we were building. So it was a lot of people that was let down and very, and probably highly disappointed with that situation.
So you finally put all this to bed, and you're doing 6 years. Where did you go? What prison did they send you to?
I ended up going to Chillicothe is where I ended up. I was there briefly, and I was there for about 8 months, and then eventually they shipped me to London, Ohio, which is London prison. And that's where I finished up the rest of my time, which was in London. So,
Anthony, what was your, going in, and talking to all these different people whenever their first day going in and what's going through your mind, did you have any particular way that you thought, how am I going to handle this? This is different. This is the unknown world of something I'm going to have to figure out. What were your thoughts?
Well, for me, man, I was angry, man. So I think that was like the most turbulent time for me. And that was the most unpredictable time. And that was probably the most vulnerable time when things could have unraveled and I could have maybe did something crazy, right? Because I was, because I was angry, man. Can't do anything. They got you kind of bottled up. you're not feeling like you're being heard. You're not getting any justice. The
Right.
system is just built against you.
No
And
control.
it's like, no control. And so I was angry, man. I mean, I get into a lot of little, altercations. I was real angry, real, pissed off. And
Well, it's kind of like a powder
that,
keg in there. Everybody's right on the edge. I think as the guys get in there longer, they are less of a powder keg. But I think that your nerves and your stress level and the unknown and how to get into a new routine and all those things, they're right there, right there. And you can go off and that does happen to some people. And then that ends up being really bad because they're in a new situation and they get a worse situation because they've gone off when they probably normally wouldn't have.
Especially when you got things like you got assets, you got businesses, you got things going, I can't be in here right now. I have to be
busy.
here tomorrow. Like,
right.
I got things that I have to do. Like, this can't happen,
Yeah.
So when you're in that situation, it's frustration. So to answer your question, I was real angry, man. I mean, that was really, the telltale for me.
What do you think for you, Anthony, was your turning point? Because I noticed that you ended up doing a lot of things positive in prison. What do you think came to you for your mindset shift?
Spirituality, man. I think, for a long time while I was in there, man, I was not really interested in anything spiritual. Like, so anybody would try to bring up anything, articles, hey man, read the Bible, do this, do that, for the first, couple of weeks, about a month or so in there, man, I was just against all of that. I wasn't, I was like, you know what? I'm not in here because of God. I'm in here because of my decision, poor decision. I'm not about to go and run to God and beg for forgiveness and be a hypocrite and then right back, what I'm saying? If things go right, I'm right back in the streets doing the same thing and not really giving the type of, reverence and respect that I think, God is due if you're really going to be spiritual, So I always looked at, a lot of people that was religious. I always looked at them as hypocritical. I always was like, man, you're faking it. You don't really love God because if you love God, you wouldn't do X, Y, Z. So I had this perverted, so to speak, viewpoint on religion at that time. I kind of, studied a little bit and another reason is in high school, in college, I studied a lot of the different religions. Mm-hmm. So I kind of started to form my own different viewpoint. I studied Taoism, Buddhism, Shinto, Confucianism, all these different things because I was so intrigued. When you're in college, you want to learn all these things, right?
Yeah.
So as I started to gradually grow, I just had this other viewpoint. And I really didn't want to be disrespectful and just start now, save me, God, out of this situation when I wasn't praying or doing anything before I got in that situation, right? So to answer your question, that's
what turned you.
That's what turned me, man. Really, really starting to, I had a guy that was on me and kept bugging me and finally, he cracked it and he forced me and made me threw a Bible on my table and was like, forget it, throw it in the trash, man. But you're gonna, read it. And finally looking at it, me staring at that Bible, I finally picked it up and started reading. So that was a turning point for me. And that's when I started to get a sense of peace of being able to kind of read it, reading stories, looking at other people in ancient times, their lives, looking at other trials, looking at how they dealt with the trials, looking at how they went through the trials and how they relied on God through the trials. It started giving me a different and a fresh perspective on the spiritual side. So that was like the number one thing for me, man. And that's what really helped me most important. That was like,
well, and from there you started teaching people. You taught a lot of people through their GED and real estate. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I ended up getting baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses while I was in prison. So teaching was something that I was always doing on the spiritual side. But in one occasion, I had a bunkie that wanted that they used to hear about us, used to know about our commercials, knew about what we did. A lot of people knew about when I was in there. A lot of people knew me. I didn't know who they was because they would see our commercials and they knew that I was a real estate guy. Yeah. So, you had a lot of people would say, hey, I want to learn about real estate. But I had a bunkie that really wanted to learn about real estate. And he had asked me like, man, I really want to learn. And he was from Detroit. And he was like, I've been wanting to learn about real estate all my life, man. And I just never had anybody teach me. So that was like the start of it. So I didn't know how I wanted to teach it because at this moment, I had been locked up for a couple of years now. I was different. I had started looking at life differently. I started looking at life more from a spiritual perspective and doing things in a more upright, righteous way, making sure, decisions are right. So now I had to figure out, okay, how do I teach real estate? Because I didn't want to teach the rah, get rich type thing because that's not really the reality of it because I went from making millions and losing and going back and making, so it's more of a, so I'm like, I have to keep it real. I don't want them to get this false perspective. So how would I teach this person how to invest in real estate if he were me and, you know what I'm saying? And I'm the person now that have done this. Mm-hmm. So I told him I'll let him know. And then I figured out how to do that. I says, okay, here's how I'm going to teach it. I think I'm just teaching in these phases. And I went back and says, okay, I'll teach you. I says, but under one condition, I want you to take all the notes and then I want you to type them up because he worked at he actually worked outside the prison at the auto mechanic shop. So he had access to a computer. So I said, so I want you to type everything that I teach up, take the notes, type it up. And if you're willing to do that, I'll teach you because I didn't want to do this again just in case somebody else wanted to learn. I figured like if we put it all down on a blueprint, I'll have it. And then if I needed to, I can teach it to other people if they wanted to learn, right? So he was like, absolutely. And that's what he did, man. For 8 months, I sat down and taught him and another gentleman. And we created the blueprint, man. 4 phases to becoming a successful real estate investor. Phase 1, understanding the money, banking and financing. Phase 2, real estate investment strategies. Phase 2, personal credit and business credit. And then phase 4, establishing your corporation and utilizing government grants and free money to build your business. So that was the foundation. And I said 8 months taught him that, man. And it started with him. And then next thing you know, after they graduated, it went to like 4 other guys I taught. And then they graduated. And then after that, I was teaching on a yard, like 7 or 8 guys. And that's what was like, enough is enough, man. Like the guy came and says, man, you need to go see the principal and see if you can get a classroom because all these guys are lining up wanting to learn. So I finally went and met the principal of the high school. She says, you know what, Anthony, I don't have any space, but she says, but I know that the college does. Let me introduce you to the director and the director and manager of the Urbana University. That was the college that was coming into the prison that was teaching the students. And I brought my course to them and told them what I want to do. They loved it. They was like, we love this. So they made it a certified program. They would get a certificate. I turned it into a 16-week program. I started teaching it. The average students in the class for college was like 10.
And this is outside of prison?
This was inside. Yeah, it was inside the prison.
Inside the prison. They would come inside the prison.
Yeah, it was a college. They had a college inside the prison.
Got it.
So yeah, and that was how people can get their associate's degrees and stuff like that through Urbana University. So the principal introduced me to the director. The director loved the program, so we established this 16-week program, and then I started teaching it, and I would teach it each semester. It was I taught it twice a year. Twice a year. I taught it for 4 months, and that was the course, man. And my average twice. This was so crazy. Twice a week, I taught 2 classes. So I taught 2 classes twice a week, 2 separate groups, and each of them had an average of 35 students in each class. So I taught about 70, almost close to 80 students per semester.
That is so cool. And Anthony, that had for you personally had to help you eat your time and do your time because you were helping so many people. That had to fill you up.
Man, I mean, it was amazing, man. You know, I didn't even expect anything like that. I was just starting with 1. But once I started teaching these guys, man, and then I started seeing that the age group was like 18 to like 70.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. So I had to kind of rearrange. I had to change the program in a way that would be able to, I kind of took the ideal of no man left behind.
Yeah.
Because I knew that it was going to be a disparity in education levels, and
especially in there. Sure.
So I systematically, man, set it up where it was a fun class where nobody was left behind. I set up 2. I had 2 study halls for each class, so they can come in the morning and get help. And then I had leaders. I would identify certain people that was doing great, and then I would break them into these groups of these leaders that would kind of reinforce what we were learning.
A little delegation.
Yeah, so it was delegated, man. It was a beautiful thing. It showed me just the spirit of the people and what their needs are in prison, and that was what sparked it, man. And that's why I look at even inmates and people in prison, I look at them entirely different because I dealt with everything and everyone while I was in there.
Yeah, and I bet your parent or your mom and your kids had to be proud of this unique situation that you had created. For no one else was doing this until you came in, and then there's this program that you're educating people that this is real stuff that they can use when they get out. I mean, this is educating somebody on real estate, investment, banking, mortgage, all those different pieces to where somebody can go out and actually use that and put it into play and implement it. And that's a big deal. Yeah. That is a big deal. So tell me about this, Anthony. So you get through this time, and this is helping you eat up your time. You get close to, as we all do, that 6 months to the door, little bit of anxiety deal I'm getting, those things you kind of compartmentalize, you put them to the side because you don't think about, okay, I'm not getting back into society today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year. Then all of a sudden you're looking at, holy wow, I am. What were you thinking about stepping back into the world?
Man, I was happy, man. I mean, during that time while I was locked up, man, I was able to accomplish a lot of things that I had never accomplished. I was used to business. I was used to not really using my hands. So I became a competent mechanic, you know what I mean? So I can work on any type of car. So I was happy about that because, I learned so much about auto mechanics, which was great because I had time to really get my hands dirty and learn how to put engines in and take engines out and, and deal with the overall systems in the car. And then also I ended up got my license as a water treatment license, water 1 and water 2 license, which was an amazing feat because it was only at 40% pass rating, right? So that was something those were all little victories and things that was just.
Well, you didn't waste your time. You didn't waste your time.
And then I end up, orchestrating one of the most successful real estate investment programs in the state of Ohio, man. That so for me, when I was coming out, man, I was extremely happy, what I had accomplished, and I was happy to be finally coming home, and I was actually happy.
Kept your family together.
Yeah, my family together, but I was happy for the guys that I was teaching because I was getting, reports of them doing things while I was still in there teaching. I was getting out, taking my system and using it. Yeah. But I was also so just happy just for the opportunity to finally be able to be the new me because I was not the same person that came in. And nobody be. Either you're going to be a better person or a worse person. Right. You cannot be the same going to prison. No. It's either going to go one way or the other. There's no in between. So I was actually a better man when I came out. And I was really happy, to be home, and to get out.
Yeah, in 6 years, I mean, what did you do? What was the day like when you got out after 6 years?
I mean, it was great, man. It was just like freedom, right? Like it was like we was driving in the car, man. Like I was talking to my cousin, she came and picked me up. I'm like, all right, we went to go get something to eat. That's the first thing. Like, what do we want to eat?
Yeah, gotta eat.
I don't care. Let's get some breakfast, anything. Like so, it was just like a typical day, man. Just happy to be home, man. Happy to finally, just be free.
Yeah.
But
freedom's a big deal. I mean, when you have freedom taken away from you, you can't explain that really because you almost have to have it taken away from you. But when it's given back to you, boy, there's a lot of gratitude and appreciation for that. What Anthony, because I know you hit the ground running. What did you do when you got out? Tell me what's going on now.
Well, I mean, when I first got out, man, I didn't know really what I was going to do. A funny story is that, I had these licenses now, and I was thinking like maybe I just, I could make anywhere from $19 to $25 an hour in the water treatment field. So I was thinking, hey, I'll get out and I'll do that, man. I'll just get my water license and stuff like that. But when I was sitting talking to I told my cousin, I got to see my PO. So my cousin made arrangements to see my PO. Says, all right, let me meet my PO. So I meet my PO, and I'm sitting there talking to her, and she's telling me, hey, look, you're very low level risk. So she tells me what my requirements is. I just had to email her twice a year, and she was like, she said, but I want to know what you're going to do with your life. What are you going to do? And I said, you know what? I don't know. I said, I really don't know. I said, I have all these certifications, so of course I'm going to try to see what I can do with them. I said, but really, I would love to open back up my real estate investment company and invest in real estate. And she's like, you know what? You're like the 10th guy that came in here and told me about, I want to invest in real estate.
That's because you're school.
Yes. She said, so they took this course inside of prison. And she said, and they had this system and this 24-month rule, and they had all this stuff laid out, exactly how they were going to do it. And she's like, you know what? I was quite impressed. And she said, so did you take the class? And I said,
yeah.
No, I actually was teaching the class. And she was like, oh, wow. She was like, man, Anthony, I want to commend you. She
love that.
I've never seen anybody more prepared to come out in prison in terms of what they were going to do with their life. And quote unquote, I'm sitting there not prepared. I don't know what I'm about to do with my life, but she's telling me about my students.
Students telling what they're going to go do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
I love that.
So
what a great story that is.
That was the moment right there. That was the moment when I said, okay, I got to keep going. I got to be a pillar for these guys.
Yeah.
I got to be, continuing to grow because they're going to continue to grow in this. So I don't want to be over here working at a gas station.
Yeah, so they're kind of your inspiration, really, that you got these guys going. You got to keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to be that guy that they can contact, that they can reach out to, that mentor that they can continue to reach out to. And then also, I still to this day, you got other guys. I got a call. I'll tell you another story. I got a call a couple of months ago from one of the inmates that I used to teach in there. And he had been trying to get in contact with me for a while, but I didn't know. But he finally, through the channel, caught up with me, right? And he says, we're loud. We used to play chess a lot with each other there. So I I need to come out there and whoop your butt again in some chess. And we just fun and having fun, talking or whatever. And he's like, yeah. He's like, man, first and foremost, Anthony, he says, man, I just want to let you know, man, how you have changed so many people's lives. And I'm like, man, whatever, man. I ain't trying to, do all that. He says, no, man. He says, you don't know how many people lives you have changed since you've been gone. You've been gone, but he says, but your program is still changing lives in here, man. And you ain't been in here in 7. He says, I've been teaching it. You got other people teaching it. He says, you have changed people's lives, man. And he's like, so I just been wanting to just call you to tell you, thank you, man. Like you have done, something that I will never forget, and our students and the guys in here will never forget. Your name is always ringing in here, and everybody just loves you, man. So, and it
that is very cool.
Even though I did that, that was pretty cool.
No, it is very cool because the thing of it is if you do your time and you don't waste your time, it's interesting because when you walk into prison, you walk in on your own. And it's always how those guys leave prison. Is it the high five slaps? Is it, the wishing you goodwill? Or is it you just kind of sneak out of there because you really didn't do much? And I think, that's something that I always noticed in prison is you knew who the guys were that made their time work because you saw how they left prison. And you made an impact. You in a bad situation, a dark situation, you created a light for guys to go towards to better themselves. And there's not a ton of that when you talk about prison. You and I were talking, Anthony, about the movie Shawshank Redemption. There's a line in that movie that is so true. You better get busy living or get busy dying, and that goes on to life too. Not just prison, but there's really only two kinds of prisoners: the ones that are curled up and have given up, and the ones that are trying not to lose themselves and trying to better themselves. And you did that, and I think that's so cool. Take me to where you are today. What's going on with you? I know you've got the book Boundless Success. You've got your academy. I want you to talk about. You're still, I think, in the real estate world. So what's in your family? What's going on with you today?
Great. I mean, man, family is doing great. My kids is doing great. Of course, I've been able to bond with them. When I first got home, that was my number one thing, was to get my boys, because they were struggling. My daughter was already in college. She's been doing extremely well. She's a nurse. But I got the boys when I got out, man. And that was really my number one goal when I first got out, to get the boys. So I finally, after 6 months, was able to get my own place. I've had the boys move in with me. My youngest started high school. My oldest was going into his last year in high school. So that was like a good moment for me to finally have them all together, had a family back together. So that was the great thing. And then after that, man, it was grind. It was like my boys was able to just see the steps, man. I mean, I started off, doing turns and doing renovations, and I opened back up the company. I did my first project. I did a consultant project. It was like $5,000. And then I was off and running, like, okay, I'm back in the game. And then I started doing turns for other people. I opened back up my construction company, and I was the only employee, and I was just doing, stuff to really pay the rent, man. And that was all of the end of 2015. Came home in March. I did that for all of 2015. By the time 2016 started getting momentum, in 2016, I purchased my first 3 properties, and then by the time 2017 and going into 2018, mid 2018, I owned probably more than 17, 18 properties. I purchased probably more than 10 million in real estate.
Was it?
So
did you have Anthony? Did you have a hard time being an ex-felon, being able to get financing towards that, or were you able to set it up in a way that you were able to do all that and keep it all working?
No, that's a great question. That's the good thing that I love about investing in business and real estate, is that it doesn't really have anything. It doesn't really care too much about that type of stuff. Are there companies that go deeper and want to know if you do background checks and want to make a decision based off of your past history? Yes. But one thing is that the great thing about, before I ever went to prison, the one thing that I understood is I understood the money. And here's what I know about money. People with money need people who actually can get out here and make their money make money. Mm-hmm. So people can care less about whether you're a felon or anything like that if you're good at what you do, and if you live in your life in a way that's, advantageous to them and yourself, right? Yep. So now that I was out, nobody really knew if I was in prison or not. And my company, when I opened it back up, I put everything in my company. So I didn't put anything in my name. So right. I don't have any problems with the police. I don't have any, because I don't own anything. My business owns everything. And that's the way that I taught my students when they got out. And that's the way that I lived as well. So because when you get out, and if you was an ex-dope dealer or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can be doing the greatest things in the world. If they pull your name up, a police officer is 9 times out of 10 is going to just stop you, simply because it's going to come out that you're an ex-felon. And it's just, if it's sad, but it's just the reality, right? So I did everything business wise, and to this day, Anthony Pierre don't own anything. Yeah. So I don't have that issue and problem, and I'm able to get loans. And matter of fact, within a few years being out, I had as much as a $5 million line of credit. And I taught my students how to do all of that, and how to purchase and how to do those things without having to worry about dealing with the police and cops, and then understanding the money. Right. I can go, if I got a person right now that I know that I can help them make, 10, 20, 30% return on their money, and I can do it in a way where they're protected and they feel safe, they will hand me $1 million. I mean, it's just that simple, right? So when you understand those things, and then you lose the fear of, worrying about what people might think of you. No, you have to just step into your shoes.
Confidence.
And be you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with confidence and be you.
Yeah, I love that, Anthony. What do you think's your most favorite thing about being out, with just, the freedom of getting through the 6 years? What do you think you appreciate the most? Options, man. I just love the fact that, you have options. And I control my own space. Like, yes. In prison, you had evil COs, male and females, controlling your life sometime, and you had limited options. You only could do this. It's like, you only can do this, and that's it, right? You only can have this type of food.
You only can go so far. You might can get $21 a month, but that's about it that you're going to make, you know what I'm saying, in prison, right? Like,
it's the little things.
Out here, it is like no limit on what you can do, whether it's business, whether it's spiritual, whether it's helping people. I've been able to, since then, start the academy. I wrote the book last year. Then I opened up a State Masters, a real estate academy, which now I'm teaching people all over the country how to invest in real estate through those 4 phases that I talked about a little bit earlier, but also taking it into a whole nother level, because I'm able to teach a lot of things that I couldn't teach in prison because I needed them to be focused when they got out. And I didn't want them to be distorted by all these other different things. I wanted them to focus on certain things. So now I'm able to kind of open that up, take it through stages. I got a intermediate that I'm teaching this summer. I'll be adding to my course, an advanced course where we would get into, deeper things.
Is it an online course, Anthony?
Yeah, it's we have an educational portal online. They're able to learn. They're able to.
How would somebody look for that?
Well, I mean, you can go to, if you can contact me, you can go to estatemaster.cc and you can reach out to me. You could email me. We also have, I'm on social media. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. You can look under Anthony Pierre and pull me up there. So I'm on all the social medias and stuff like that. So you can find me if you want to find me. You can go put Anthony Pierre in and jump on, and if you're interested in getting a book. And if you want, I'll give you some links and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'll put that in when we do when we release everything on social media too.
Yeah.
One last question for you, Anthony. You've been through a lot, and for people listening, and they hope that when they get knocked down, they can get back up, and they hope that they can stay positive. What do you think is your biggest takeaway from everything that you've been through, or a few of them?
Well, I mean, my biggest takeaway is that, everyone is going to have trials. You cannot, live in this imperfect world without having trials. And it doesn't matter how much money you got in your bank account or not. You're going to deal with trials. You're going to have these moments where you think your world is collapsed and then you can't breathe and you need help. I mean, everyone, I don't care who they are. You can be from Michael Jordan to the most lowest of who you may, how we may look at in society. We all, are flesh and blood, so we're going to have issues and problems. So my biggest takeaway is that, like I put in the book, is there's no such thing as failure. You only fail when you stop, when you quit. A light, a switch, a radio, it only stops, when you unplug it or when it's broken. But as long as you continue to go and continue to move forward, there is no stopping you. Momentum is powerful. Yeah. And the only way you can get momentum is by moving. So when you're laying in the bed and you don't want to get out of bed, the success for today is get up out of the bed because that's a success in itself. And then take those steps, to be able to deal with what you're dealing with. And then also take responsibility. Yeah. Whatever you're dealing with, 9 times out of 10, you know the solution to the problem. You just don't want to face it.
Right.
So that's where the real courage come in. Yeah. When you will just face it. It doesn't matter if you're going to have to go to prison. It doesn't matter if you're going to, whatever it is, when you face it, that's when you actually will grow through it because now there's going to be an even greater blessing on the other side.
I love that. Good stuff. We can leave it there. That's a good way to end it, Anthony. Good stuff, man. Okay, so Boundless Success on Amazon. And if you want to check out my book too, it's Nightmare Success. They're both on Amazon.
I definitely want to check it out.
Anthony, man, just proud of you. Just, gosh, that's what you want. And I think it's cool that your kids saw this, how you built up, you fell down, you found yourself, you taught others, you helped people in a dark patch. It's all good stuff. And how you affected those people going forward. You're continuing to affect people with change in a positive way, making a difference. That's the good stuff. And that's got to fill you up. It fills me up just listening to it. So Anthony, thanks so much. And everybody out there, appreciate the likes and the shares and the subscriptions. And we're on YouTube. You'll be able to see Anthony and me here on our YouTube link. So, and I'll make sure that we have all the links for Anthony in the end here. So anybody wants to get a hold of him, we'll be able to do so. Anthony, my man, thank you.
Hey, thank you. And I want to let you know too, man. Thank you for inviting me, man. It's been a pleasure, and I'm proud of you as well, man. I know the journey as well, man, and I'm super proud when I see you out here doing your thing despite all the trials and tribulations that I know you had to face when you went through what you need to went through. So likewise, man.
I appreciate that. Everybody, Nightmare Success in and out. Thanks for being here today.